let me ask you this question.
Sure.
Okay. You are living in Italy, which is awesome, but you weren't born in Italy, right? You moved there, in the recent chapter of your life. You're a coach helping people worldwide through many different facets. You're a professor over there, an adjunct professor. Like, quite the life that you've created for yourself. And that's not just a life that happens by accident. So my question is, when did you imagine this chapter of your life, and when did this come to fruition for you?
It's such a great question. And you called out something that's really important, is that it just doesn't happen, right? This is all like about intentionality. And I talk about this all the time, that there are moments in our life, actually any of the moments, the intro that you talked about when you introduced me, it's about, if you're wondering, there's something else out there. Like if you are in that state, there's got to be something else. That's a signal to start to look outside, right? So basically, this chapter of my life started after my wife passed away from metastatic breast cancer. And one of the things I learned and I talk about is loss. When we really break loss down, loss is definitely a measure of the value we put on that which we don't have anymore. But even underneath that is loss is a lack of self and security. I'm a big acronym person. So the self aspect is identity. And the security is the world doesn't seem safe anymore because everything you had sort of vanished. And I realized at that point in time, I'm like, okay, I don't know who I am at this moment because she became my purpose and all of that. But who would I like to be? What would I like to live? And a lot of times we look at things about, okay, I want to have this, I want to have that, and I want a house, I want this car. We don't break it down into, what do I want to feel? What's the lifestyle I want? What do I represent? And so I looked at, wow, I accumulated a wealth of knowledge while I was with her. I was not a life coach before this moment. I was an investment banker, but I realized I really never was my wife's caregiver. Even though she had metastatic breast cancer for 11 years, she thrived up until really the very end. But I was her coach. And so after she passed away, I realized what I missed was that sense of purpose of helping someone, of helping them achieve their dreams. So I looked at all that. I said, I have this resource now that is just so important for people to understand. What do I do with it?
Yeah.
And that led me to think about rebuilding my career. And then I said, what is the craziest dream I've ever had? And it was to live in Italy. And what I learned through Desiree, but also I'm a pretty open person, right? So I grew up in an abusive relationship with an alcoholic father. So that taught me a lot as well. And I just looked at all that and I realized, you know what? Everything is impermanent. And so there's really no right time to do any of this. So let me go and let me attempt to live those dreams. And I use the word specifically attempt because today, try, when we say try is all about the excuses of why we might not make it. And it's not as motivating to me. So I always talk about attempt. And I said, all right, you know what? Let me attempt this. Instead of asking myself, what if I fail? Let me ask myself, what if I succeed? Actually, I asked myself, what if I effing pull it off? But because that was the motivation. That was the thrill. Like we're here to craft a life. We're here to get to know ourselves. And one of the things I learned that's all part of this possibility and action thing that I talk about is that life is an inward journey meant to be expressed outward. We have to go in, we have to understand who we are because we're unique. We have desires, we have dreams that might fall out of the scope of what we were told is the path. You know, if you think back 40 years ago, it was, a house, a white picket fence, 2 children, and a car, right? So, and a job for life, which we don't have anymore. So I looked at that and I said, okay, if I'm the craft person here, I'm the designer of everything. What do I want it to be? And what I learned in crafting, and I'm really lucky because here in this little town I live in, there's actually a sculptor. And if you watch someone sculpt, they're chipping away all the unnecessary to get to the core.
Mm.
And I pulled that into myself, saying, okay, all of this stuff that I think I need or I want, or it really is sort of noise. What's the core of the life I want to live? And that became a lifestyle. And from that, I worked backwards.
Mm.
And I reverse engineered my life.
Meaning you're at the end result, and then you look and say, okay, what happened right before the end result? What happened right before that until you reach the point where you are now?
Exactly.